Let's see what happens here. Hopefully Facebook hasn't changed anything on me. And whoa, something weird just happened. There we go. All right. So if I'm lucky, it's all working. And if anybody logs on here in the next few seconds, let me know if you can see me, hear me, and all that good stuff. And we're going to get started here right at 6 p.m. So if you're seeing this after the fact on YouTube, on the Tradition School of Herbal Studies YouTube page, you can go ahead and fast forward about 5 minutes and you'll be at the actual start. Yay! Hey! Yay, you made it. So, awesome sauce. So, I'm going to guess everything's working. Hopefully, you see lots of cool herbs in the background. I got your email, and hopefully, I will be able to get this thing going here in a few minutes. I didn't spam the world as much as I usually do, so we'll see how many people show up today. And I'm looking to see. Yeah, I was going to say, hey, it's Gay Pride Month. I missed the Gay Pride Parade and all the cool stuff downtown. So I figured I'd at least wear the hat for a few minutes. I might take it off once we get going. It might constrict the blood flow to my brain or something. And, all right. If anybody's just logging on, yay, I see more humans showed up. If anybody shows up, feel free to tell us who you are. And if you got any questions to put in the queue, please do. And we're going to get started here in 5 minutes. We'll get started right at 6 o'clock. But I always like to make sure everybody gets a shot to hear whatever babblement I'm going to go on about. We've got a couple of good questions to get us started. Hopefully a few more people show up and give us all their cool questions or concerns or anything along those lines. So hang tight. I see a few more bodies showing up. It's so funny. I can see when people show up, but I can't actually see who they are. But if you type it into the chat, I'm sure it's on your board there somewhere when you log on to this thing. But you can type in a question, just say, hey, let me know where you're from. I'm always curious to all the interesting places from around the country, and oftentimes we get folks from around the world, not just Canada. So I'm always curious to see where all folks are coming in from. I promise we'll get started here in just a few minutes. And we got a couple of good questions. Look at some cool things in the herbal realm that are coming up, and I promise I will keep it short and swarm. Hey, Pickle, I'll keep it short and sweet to the cheesy commercial part. I keep it to about a minute. I talk really fast for that part because I think most folks know who I am, and always get a few new faces. So I'll do a little station identification right at 6 when we get started, and I'll do another one right around 7 wherever I get a nice little break in the babblement. And we'll get started. If anybody's got any cool questions, feel free to go ahead and post them now before the madness starts and my eyes get all blurry trying to remember all the stuff I'm supposed to say. And, I did want to I forgot about that question. I had an interesting one today. Cool. It's like I meant to write that one down. Occasionally people text me or Facebook, and oh God, there's too many things on the internet, and they send me questions in non-typical formats, and I don't always remember to write them down or gather them up on my, because times I'm on my cell phone. Canine flu, which one? Just kidding. Flu, going around. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. That's a great one. It's funny. I was thinking, it's like I haven't talked about critters much lately, and so that's a good lead into critter stuff. Da, da, da. All right, cool. And if anybody's just jumping on, I'm seeing a few people pop in and out and back in again. Go ahead and say who you are, where you come from. If you got any questions, post them now, and I'm going to, for real, start, it looks like in 2 minutes. So it's like, oh, I forgot to check one other place people post stuff. That's all good stuff. Nothing there. Oops, who's that? Nope. Nope. Okay, I think I got everybody. Cool. All right, making sure I didn't forget anybody. So we're going to get started here in just 1 minute. So tell us who you are, where you come from. Post a question if you've got one. We've got a couple of good things lined up, and we're going to get started in 1 minute. Yay! No, I don't have my chickens. I felt like I was neglecting them. Hey, Lisa. I was neglecting them, so I gave them to my neighbor. So sometimes I felt like I was just spending a lot of money to make really happy chickens with my fancy organic feed, and I couldn't eat that many eggs. And occasionally they were also late night snacks for the raccoons, which never was a fun way to start my day. So hopefully I'll get some chickens again one of these days when I get a little bit easier schedule. All right, it's 6 o'clock, so we are official. So if you're just joining us for the first time, and in case you forgot, I'm Bob Linde of Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies and the Tradition School of Herbal Studies. So I started all this fun when COVID hit, and I missed talking and doing all my free lectures and other stuff. So I started doing this, and I felt like I got such a positive feedback from it, and people that I don't normally get to say hi to from around the state and around the country and ultimately around the world. And so I decided to keep going until I got tired of it or people stopped showing up. And it's an opportunity to post questions and for yourself, just out of curiosity. I like to think I know a wee bit about Caribbean tropical medicine, our Florida native plants. And was a Western herbalist long before I ran off to acupuncture school and became a Chinese herbalist and an acupuncturist. So please, as you're showing up, post your questions. I would do my best. I usually try to mention them as I'm writing them down. I kind of put them into the queue wherever it fits. I've got a few things for the evening, but nothing too crazy. And if you don't know, we're in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida, at 6340 Central Avenue. And this is our we just moved a couple months ago from the Grand Central District, and we have a teaching medicinal garden here. You're welcome to come and visit it Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. And there's not always somebody there to give you the tour, but you're always welcome to walk around. We've always got some cool events going on there. Our full moon market that's brought to us by Blue Raven Collective, and so they have a drum circle and vendors and all kinds of cool stuff. But here at the office, we do see patients here 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And we've got 3 acupuncture physicians here that really all are phenomenal herbalists. They've all studied with me for about 2 years and probably run circles around me these days. And we've also got 2 herbalists on staff, both Western and Chinese herbalists. So you can see if you just want to focus only on the herbs, you're welcome to schedule with one of them, and you can call the office during business hours, 727-551-0857. And we've always got great classes. Of course, we've got the Western and Chinese herbal programs where it's all the way from very beginner all the way through clinical practitioner. And so a part of that is that 3 nights a week, we actually have clinical practice for our senior students. Monday night is acupuncture interns in their last year of school from Dragon Rises School in the Bradenton, Sarasota area. Tuesday night is my Western herbal students rocking it, and on Wednesday night are my awesome Chinese herbal students. They're all supervised by me or one of the other senior practitioners here. So it's a way of price is an issue to be seen, find the right herbs for you, look at some lifestyle adjustments that you might help to either maintain health or even take care of chronic issues. And in case you can't see, like we have a few herbs here, and we actually have more than that. So for anybody who's like, I know what I need, and you just want to come and get a ounce of chamomile or something like that, you're always welcome to come by Monday through Saturday to purchase your herbs by the gram. I like to think we got good prices and some phenomenal products We get them mostly from Star West Botanicals and Oshala Farms. And we also have a number of tinctures here that you can buy by the ounce. And we do some fresh herbs, like we get shipped overnighted to us from Oshala Farms, things like feverfew, milky oats, and a couple of other cool herbs as well. So feel free to stop by always. But when somebody comes in and says, hey, what do you got for, we always say we've got an appointment. So nobody likes to hear that, but it's the truth. Treating serious medical conditions with herbs requires a more detailed intake. So classes are coming up that are really cool stuff. Tomorrow, well, actually, this weekend is Herbal First Aid, and it's going to be everything from home first aid to more wilderness kind of first aid. One of my favorite classes to teach. I love first aid stuff. It's so much fun, and there's so many different approaches that, hey, Angela, I wore this hat just for you, so I may take it off in a minute because it's cutting down on my blood flow. So first aid is this weekend. There's still time to sign up. If you're coming in person, super easy. If you're online, we do all of our classes, almost all of our classes, distance as well, live on Zoom, and everybody gets a recording. And since there's no supplies to ship out, you can even sign up tonight or first thing in the morning and get the link. Class starts at 10. We've got a lot of our Thursday and Friday night class series is open to everybody. You don't have no prerequisites, no knowledge needed. We've got a class coming on about auricular therapy. That's the ear seeds. A lot of times people come in here and looking at that microsystem of the ear. I might even talk about that a little bit today if I get a chance. Just really neat stuff. Phenomenal for the treatment of stress and pain. And all the things that stress aggravates, it's going to have some benefit to that as well. That's July 11th on a Thursday, July 12th on a Friday. Ruthie's going to be talking about cordyceps and like everything. Actually, one of my favorite mushrooms. Literally does so many great things for long-term care and so forth. On July 18th, a Thursday, Gray is going to be talking about Ayurvedic medicine and the digestive system. And I don't know what we're actually doing on July 22nd. I should. If anybody knows, feel free to shout it out. But our next AHG chapter, so our local West Coast Florida chapter of the American Herbalist Guild, we're doing something. I'm assuming it'll be fun. Oh, I do know what it is. It's going to be Shed Talks, where people can sign up to give a 18-minute lecture, just like TED Talks, but about cool herb stuff. That's actually we came up with that last year. It was such a big success, super fun, open to anybody. You don't need to be one of my students to do that. If you know stuff, go ahead, and we have a limited number of slots, so it's a great way to get in there. And the next open forum will be on July 26th. And if you've studied, oh man, it's hot under that thing. Sorry, I'm gonna, yay, celebrating Gay Pride Month, so I thought I'd wear it for everybody. So if you're either an acupuncture student, an acupuncture practitioner, or a Chinese herbal medicine, the Florida State Oriental Medicine Association, their annual meeting is coming up. August 16th through the 18th. I think you can still get early bird special pricing. You can do a one day of classes, or you can come for the entire weekend. Of course, I'll be teaching there. Yay, I think I'm teaching 2 classes that weekend, so I'm really excited about that. One of my favorite things to do, and that's in Orlando. And all the great vendors that support our profession, both herbal profession as well as acupuncture, will be there. August 2nd, I don't usually go into it. I haven't taught an herb-drug interaction class in a long time, and this is a free class, and it'll be at least 2 hours. I believe we're doing that on Zoom, and so you do need to register so that you get the link for that, but that's appropriate for everyone of every skill set. I teach a little bit different than a lot of people do, so mine's really user-friendly. What up, Natalie? So I do encourage, I think we've already got a lot of people signed up for that, so I'll make sure I leave some time for questions and answers on all of that. But for practitioners who are struggling with the safety of our herbs, when some of those complex problems, it really becomes important that we have a way of being able to safely utilize the herbs and drugs together. And then, of course, my favorite conference of the year, the American Herbalist Guild Conference, is going to be in Black Mountain, just outside of Asheville, October 4th through 7th. And I'm psyched that every 2 years, they ask us not to even apply if you teach. So if I teach this year, I don't get to teach next year. bummer. I would teach every year if I could. So I'm teaching this year, and excited just to be in a beautiful location. And I encourage everybody of every skill level. It's an opportunity to recharge your batteries, talk with cool people of like mind, herb walks, just beautiful place there in Black Mountain where they hold the conference. And you might learn something as well. And so you meet a lot of nice people there, and a lot of the other schools are represented there. A lot of the teachers have their own programs, and everybody has different approaches. Hey, Ronnie. So if anybody has any questions, I don't think I missed any questions. I'm double checking. Nope. So feel free to post any questions. Hey, Mika. I think, oh, God, I almost forgot. So if you're not going to the American Herbalist Guild Conference, and there's still an early bird special available, there's also, I believe there's an early bird special still available for another like 2 weeks. But this is the Thai medicinal herb workshop with Thai herbs and herbal compresses. This is a weekend intensive. And oops, I'm going to try to make it so you guys can see this. You feel free to call the school tomorrow and learn more, but you can sign up online. I know there is registration online at traditionsherbschool.com, and you can find out more about it there. I'm not going to read that whole thing. That would be painful. All right. We got a couple of good questions. Actually, I had a question that came in this morning that is always an interesting one. And it was about sickle cell anemia. And oddly enough, I should have brought a copy of my mom's book. So my mother, oddly enough, was one of the first people to write a book for the general public about sickle cell, talking about the difference between sickle cell anemia, sickle cell trait, and what carriers and receptive genes. But she did it in such a way with really simple graphs and made for the general public. There's a long sword tale I will spare you all because it's not important. But it is something that we usually think of the Black community, because of their African roots, as being the people who are the folks that are dealing with this genetic condition called sickle cell. And the name of it is about a genetic trait that causes kind of a misshapen, or sickle, kind of like that half moon kind of thing, but just generally misshapen red blood cells. And that can lead to clotting issues, horrible pain, debilitating pain. I've worked with a few people over the years who are dealing with it, and particularly hard on kids because they aren't always on top of the lifestyle things, and that can cause a real problem. Hey, Kat, good to see you. And so it's important to recognize that it's not limited to folks of African descent. When we look at the potential for that, that includes the Middle East and Southern Europe, as well as a small subset of sickle cell, I believe, that comes from Southeast Asia. That's the least common. So usually we're looking at anybody with more melanin, but to remember that Spanish heritage, Portuguese heritage, Greek heritage are also at risk. It's just slightly less common. It's thought that sickle cell is protective against malaria, and so it allowed you to, there is a potential for a shorter lifespan because of sickle cell. But because of the clots, it can lead to strokes and things like that. Most people are able to get through reproductive age, are protected from malaria because of this genetic condition. And it allows for the continuation of a population. So good and bad, as all things are. Hey, Susan. So yeah, Susan, this is your question earlier. And it's funny, we recently had somebody in student clinic, I think it was the Tuesday night clinic, and it was a gentleman from, I forget where, one of the African countries where sickle cell is very common. He was on 0 medications, and he was completely managing his sickle cell through lifestyle. Phenomenal shape. He looked 20 years younger than he ought to be. I think he was in his 50s, so he was actually doing really well. He'd only had one episode in the last 10 years or so, and it was because of twofold thing. A, he didn't follow his regimen that he was being very good about, that he got stressed out and he wasn't drinking water religiously. And that led to a hospitalization that was serious, but he quickly, IV fluids and probably some blood thinners, that he was back on it and then had gone another 10 years. And he came to see us not so much that it was that he was having a problem, but he wanted to see if he could do a better job of managing his sickle cell. And this guy probably knew more about it than I ever will. Nothing like living with something that not a lot of doctors know about, to have to become your own advocate and to become an expert in the field. And so he knew, and I will reiterate, the single most important thing you can do is drink water. So staying hydrated, really make sure that we don't end up with some inflammation or stickiness. Part of reducing inflammation, and I hate the word inflammation because it's tossed around so for everything under the sun, is making sure your blood sugar levels stay well under 100. That's kind of the magic number. So making sure your A1C, which looks at a 3-month window of blood sugar levels, but also just your regular fasting blood sugar, is staying in a more reasonable range. And so that means limiting all of those foods that are in our friend, making sure that you're maintaining a perhaps lighter body frame than would be normal, carrying any kind of what up, Mark? There you go. Yeah, we need the hydration for the rest of us too. Your trip, dude. Mark is amazing, dude. He's a hoot for many reasons. So the keeping a slightly lighter body frame than is normal through regular exercise, and so strength training isn't as important with sickle cell anemia, but more of the aerobic exercise to keep that healthy cardiovascular system. But there's a interesting herb out there that's not well known in the US and probably not very well known in Africa as well. It's an herb that comes from northern South America called Suma, and I'll type that in the chat. And I totally don't remember the Latin name, so y'all are going to have to Google that one on your own. But Suma is sometimes called Brazilian ginseng, for lack of a better name, and even though it has zero relationship to American or Chinese ginseng. It just has some of those adaptogenic properties, energizing for the very debilitated, aging, decline, sexual dysfunction as we age. So not so much from overall, like a 20-year-old is not going to get the benefits of Suma from a sexual standpoint, but more somebody whose testosterone levels are starting to decrease, they're aging. That's the person who's going to get benefit from long-term help from it. It seems to be beneficial for anxiety as well. But the really cool reason, the why that is specifically recommended for sickle cell, and has some decent research about it, it seems to improve the shape and size of red blood cells. And so it's really kind of a fascinating use. And so you can get on PubMed and find some pretty good research. Rain Tree Herbs, I think it's .com, has some really up-to-date research on Suma. This is a common herb in Brazil, Venezuela, Ecuador, and a few of those other northern part of South America. And so it is native to that area. So anybody dealing with sickle cell concerns, water and Suma are a starting point. If you're doing that, you're going to do a really good job. So that can go a long way with all of it. And so I'm seeing more folks popping up. So if you're just joining us, feel free to post your questions or if any clarifying or anything else on here, and I will put it in the queue as we go. And Pickles, I'm going to talk about yours. So canine flu. So there's There's always a couple of different, and I'm going to just say animal diseases. Whether we look at bird flu that's attacking some of our we're concerned of that jumping over into a different species. There's a bovine thing going, or actually, I guess the bird flu's jumped over to cows, and now they're afraid cows are going to bring it over to us. But in this case, it's just like a lot of the puppy dogs out there are getting not the traditional just kennel cough kind of issue, but an actual flu. And just like humans, there are species specific viruses that will attack every critter. And just like the influenza that comes through every year, there is any number of different strains of influenza, flu, and oftentimes different approaches for it. So dogs get it as well. And the best prevention for that, of course, is maintaining the dog's health ahead of time. I would say for most dogs, we don't need to give them necessarily billions of immune boosting herb kind of things. They're similar to humans as well as for dogs on their use of herbs. Our dosing is very similar, that we adjust based on weight. They may not get their digestive system's a little bit different, so they're not going to get the same extraction from things that we do. And because so many critters, puppies are smaller, if we're talking a little Chihuahua, if we use an herb that's mildly toxic and don't process it properly first, that can actually start to affect them. But usually exercise and a healthy diet goes a long way. And one of the concerns oftentimes is, just like with humans, if you're going to a concert with 1,000 people in it, you're going to come back with some kind of germs. I don't know what, so you better be top notch. And although dogs really do need socialization, dog parks oftentimes are like going to a concert. That there is so many dogs and of different health statuses, and their poop and pee is everywhere, and it's hard. They're oftentimes sharing mud puddles or water bowls out there at dog parks. So in a particular time, if you're following the news and seeing a particular viral dysfunction coming through, it might be the time to limit dog park exposure, and maybe like check with a friend who's got a dog and get your socialization in there, make sure that their puppy is healthy as well. Here in the St. Pete area, there is a dog beach down at Fort DeSoto that doesn't get too crowded. The last time I checked, it's been a while since I've been down there. But that's certainly a fun place, and lots of moving air with the coastal and the salt water. Bringing your own water bowl for prevention as well, so that your dog is getting your water, not the community bowl with lots of doggy slobber and fun germs. Hey, Stevie. So all that aside, a lot of the same herbs that we might use, and I'm going to come back around and then contradict myself, we can certainly use for dogs. The one that I'm going to put a caution with is elder. So a lot of times we use elder flower, elder berries. All the better then. When we're working with elder, and that's anything in the stone fruit family, and elder is in the stone fruit family, it does contain cyanotic compounds, and so yet we give that to babies and so forth. Those compounds are neutralized by heating. And so too often when we're working with dogs in particular, we're just taking the herbs, we just throw them in the food bowl because dogs will just chow down and they don't care. In the case of anything in that rose family, in those stone fruit families, if we're using that for dogs, or any animal for that matter, it should be heated first prior to getting. So you could make a tea out of it, is the most likely way. If you have a dry dog food, you could then hydrate it with the infusion that you made out of that. Dogs in particular, obviously dogs are primarily eating meats, and that's their protein source, but also their B12 source. A lot of dog foods are supplemented with B12, And the biggest concern with doing those stone fruits is that cyanotic compounds that are in there will block the absorption of B12 and just kind of making the dog struggle a little bit. So make sure you heat those things and make a tea out of it. There's lots of other herbs you can use that are safe for dogs, and it can be as simple as one of our local plants here, Biden's alba. It's a nice respiratory, it has benefit, but what I would argue is I have not seen, I can't say I've read enough about it. I've seen the headlines and take a quick glance, but whenever there's influenza, human or puppy, it's important to say not here's the antiviral herb, because that's pretty much every herb on the planet. It's more important to say, how is this manifesting in my puppy or my human? And based on how it's manifesting with the symptoms, that's how we should choose our herbs. And so there's an endless number of herbs. I like trying to find those things that are more culinary in their nature. Biden's plantago, plantain is great. Yarrow is generally considered safe. Elder, if you heat it, is super appropriate. Oh, wow, it's gotten that bad. All right, so they're not accepting new dogs into the shelters. Well, I'd better come up with the magical puppy remedy for the puppy flu, huh? I'll go and do my homework on that one and see how this particular strain is showing up. And it's funny, I can be predictive of like, oh, I just Google it and see what the veterinarians are saying about how the symptom pattern is. But just like, I hate to say it, everybody's an expert on COVID these days. Just like COVID, of course, usually had a weak cough, but sometimes it was gastrointestinal problems that people were getting diarrhea and vomiting from it, but not everybody did. And so even though we can assume there's a general strain of stuff, there's oftentimes a unique pattern for your puppy where it attacks something uniquely. So just pay attention, and if it's gotten that bad in this area in particular, I would just kind of minimize your exposure by watching out for those fire hydrants and other puppies, and maybe extra solo playtime with you for your furry one for now. I will say one of my favorite, I don't have the book to show it off, the Four Paws, Five Directions is my personal favorite dog and cat care book, and it has everything from acupressure that you can do, which is highly effective for dogs and cats. They usually love it. They're just getting attention, but they seem to really understand that there's some other benefit than just attention that's coming from those points when they're manipulated. It has both Chinese herbal formulas, but also some of the most common Western herbs. Oh, hopefully the connections, it didn't yell at me that there was a connection problem. Hopefully everybody's still there. But that book and, selfless promotion, if you go on the traditionsherbschool.com, under resources, I have some books Bob likes. That's one of the books. You'll pay the same price, but I make $1 off of it. So, helps pay for all my time babbling endlessly. Y'all, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's a really good book. It's fairly inexpensive. You don't need to know Chinese herbal medicine or anything like that. They really do a nice explanation. Cool. They do a nice explanation for that book. And there's lots of other good books. That's my personal favorite. If your mainstay is treating puppies or animals of any type, there's definitely more advanced books that you can get if you're a veterinarian or a vet tech or something trying to do critter herb stuff, which, by the way, it's a wide open market for those of you who are looking for a profession. I think sometime in the fall I'm doing a weekend intensive pet care. Super appropriate to do that online. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a particular puppy that may be visiting me to use as my class model that Andy will be ever so willing participant, I know. All right, we did that. So puppy flu. Oh, let's talk about deer antler. There was a question about, it drives me a little crazy. But yay, TikTok, our good marketing, or the newest multi-level marketing program comes up, and they put out whatever the herb is and say it's the new miracle to everything, and everybody needs to buy it and spend lots and lots of money and sell it to all their friends. And that's usually not how herbs work. I'll let you all know as soon as I find that herb. It's probably a weed in your backyard that's free. And for me, I always say the magic of herbal medicine is not needing it. And so if you're eating a variety of foods, as many different colors, vegetables, drinking water, and going for a walk and managing your stress, maybe every once in a while you'll need an herb. But honestly, that's the best thing we can do, is maintain our health so we don't need it. So one of the, I guess I need to watch TikTok more. One of the, if you miss anything, you can always catch it on the YouTube page, on Traditions Herb School YouTube page. I have all the past ones of this as well. So if you miss anything, you've got to go. If you got to go before we're done, I haven't covered your subject. You can check it out tomorrow when I upload it. So deer antler or deer antler velvet. They also use elk for that, and I guess that's the newest rage. It is a Chinese herb, so it's a Chinese herb. I got to type it in there, called Lu Rong, and it's pretty expensive. And there is two different ways you can get it. A lot of your antler animals will shed their antlers every year, and that is a more ethical way to do it. Nobody's getting hurt. They're not sawing it off necessarily. Those tend to be less expensive. The more expensive one is not ethically sourced from the animals, that there is some blood involved. They don't kill the animal to harvest it, but they're definitely there's and I've not watched it happen, but I know there's blood vessels involved, so I assume there's some pain involved in that. It is it's considered a very powerful herb. It is for the very debilitated, like you can't get out of bed exhausted. And here's where it gets interesting. It's very specific for yang deficiency, and I'll define that in a second. Deficiency, or Jing deficiency. And it's usually not used as a single. It can be, but it's usually used in combination in a formula. And it's used for infertility, sexual dysfunction, weak lower body. It's used for both men and women, but most common for men. But the key indication for this would be cold where you can't get warm. And so you're likely to be cold, your belly will feel cold, your back is cold, very likely to have no appetite, kind of a pale tongue, just super phlegmy, just kind of like meh. And you're like turning the AC off in the middle of summer in Florida, and likely to have loose stools, like you wake up in the morning kind of running to the bathroom. We call it daybreak diarrhea. Likely to have undigested food in the bowels, where just like your fire's gone out, your digestive fire's gone out, your fire of life has gone out, and this will rekindle it, especially when it's put into combination. And it can be added into other formulas for other reasons as well, but that's its primary use. There is a cheaper version of it that, if you're not vegan, then you're like, whatever, who cares? But if you're vegan and concerned for the ethical treatment of the animals, certainly making sure that you're getting ethically harvested antler if you're utilizing it. If you're not, and you're like, let's make sure that if somebody is going to harvest an animal, that they're not wasting it. And so obviously all parts of an animal can and should be utilized. So there is a cheaper version called Lu Jiao, and this is more gelatin, and it's utilizing a lot of the parts like hooves and antlers and tendons and ligaments, and sometimes the bone is all added in there, and so no part of the animal is going to go to waste. It's not considered as strong or as hot as the Lu Rong. The odd thing is, it's like everybody knows antlers, and it literally is all the rage. It's primarily focused on aphrodisiac, where it can be effective for that. And it's appropriate for men and women. If you go to an Asian market here, you can actually get a deer uterus. If you have a cold uterus, where like a heating pad really helps with menstrual pain, especially if there's infertility. For erectile dysfunction for men, you can get either a tincture or powdered up deer testicles or deer penis. Deer tail is considered kind of like not as expensive, but close to all of that. And so ultimately, and it's really funny, I like venison. I particularly, yeah, that would be my guess, Kristen. I was like, anybody who's got like a red face, red tongue, rapid pulse, high blood pressure should stay the heck away from any deer, anything for that matter. I tend to run cold. I don't need anything this strong. I love venison, and for as long as I can remember, probably the last 20 or 30 years, if I have venison, I'll be hot flashing that night. And so I can't even imagine what doing some of the stronger parts might do to me if I were to partake in those. So nothing wrong with it. Long history, just like many aphrodisiac kinds of things. That's usually the way it's sold. Tincture is an interesting form that is not classically done. It's hard to extract an alcohol bone. So it is sometimes it is added into a decoction where you put it into basically bone broth and boil the heck out of it. That's very common to do, or just dried and ground into a powder and encapsulated or added into soup or something. And yeah, it's always interesting. A lot of people who are very high energy people want more energy, and they're slamming the monster drinks and whatever the stuff is. If any of you remember Tony Little, who was doing all the fitness commercials, and he was like, yeah, a lot of that was cocaine, and then when he got sober, it was just coffee. I had somebody tell me that he would drink at least 2 cups of coffee, 2 pots, large pots of coffee every day. I've had a few people like that coming into the clinic, and they all want more. Give me some ginseng, give me whatever. I was like, oh my God, no, you need a sedative. So it's always interesting. The thing we like the most is oftentimes the worst thing for us. So I irritate people with that all the time because it's usually true. All right, I got all that. How am I doing on time? I'm doing great on time. So I'll do another reminder. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to post them. I still got a few more to go, and I will keep babbling. I'm just double checking and making sure I didn't forget anything. Cool. So if you got any questions, just post them into the chat. Looks like we got a decent crowd here. This one wasn't a real question, and because I know we have some folks who live up north, it does grow into Florida. But Sabrina, who's one of the students, and she's here about half the year, and she's up north the other half the year, and she was spreading the love and shared the event tonight. But she added a picture of linden, which this time of year is in bloom. I've found it at like rest stops driving up the highway occasionally. And it's a fairly large tree, with bees just when it's in flower, just buzzing around. It has this beautiful, beautiful smell to it. And personally, I think it's one of those, and she didn't ask a question so much as a pretty picture. And it's like, oh, I never talk about linden. I need to talk about it. It is, I think, a highly underutilized plant. It has such a wide range of uses, and the flowers and leaves are the primary parts used. It's used a lot in South American herbal medicine, as well as European and throughout the US and Canada, because it grows throughout all those areas. There's a couple of different species. As far as I know, all of the species can be used. And I love the flowers for any number of different reasons. But it's known to be diaphoretic, and that's fancy talk for making you break a sweat. For if there's any Chinese herb folks on here, acupuncturists, that's release exterior. And it's not as strong as elderflower, but kind of in there as well. It's also used for mild high blood pressure, mild hypertension, in particular when it's from stress, and the person will be running a little hot. And for those of you who know energetics, that makes sense. But hot is that they'll have a little redness in their face. If they have more melanin than me, that redness will be slightly darker skin in the face compared to the rest of the body. They might just say, I run hot. They're the ones cranking the AC down. They might have night sweats or hot flashes. It's a good choice for stress-induced, like mild hypertension, where it's like 140 or 150 over 90. It's stress-induced hypertension, the menopausal, kind of a lot of women as they transition into menopause, whether it's the stress-induced or the hormone fluctuations, you'll see some low-grade high blood pressure with that. It is relaxing, and so you might not want to do cross-country driving and drink a lot of linden tea. But it's also, I would put it as a similar to chamomile, as a wonderful nighttime herb to help with sleep. In particular, the flowers, the smell to me just kind of makes me want to curl up in a ball and watch bad movies. So this is an herb that has, and that's the most common. There's 100 other uses for it. But if you're lucky enough to have access to a linden tree, especially now, probably as you start to hit maybe Georgia or the Carolinas, they're probably in bloom. Up north in like Michigan, probably another month or so, maybe they'll be in bloom. This can be used dried, so you can store it, dry it and store it. But also just a wonderful thing to do a fresh tincture. I would imagine hydrosol or something of the flowers would make a nice complement. There's just some amazing uses to that. So I encourage you all to explore linden in the, I hate this word, but in the ethnic section of your grocery stores. You'll oftentimes find lindo, and it's linden. Sometimes it say linden, sometimes it says lindo. Is the linden flower, and is used in a lot of that South American as a gentle relaxation, sleep, cold, and flu. And it has antiviral properties as well. I got that. And what have I got? Oh, as long as I'm talking crazy Chinese words. Pearl powder. And so pearl powder has a long history, both in China and Japan. And it can be expensive. It's frequently adulterated with crap like beach sand, selenite. You mix it half and half, nobody can tell the difference. Pearl powder is literally supposed to be ground up pearls. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It should be this very, very like talcum powder, almost dust-like consistency, that when you put it in your hand and you like rub your hand in it, it should be cool, almost cold, and very smooth. There's no graininess to it at all. So the fine grind of it is super important. It is used in everything from internal medicine to external medicine to makeup, and for beautification. And I would say its primary use is for beauty, and I won't call it racist kind of thing. Maybe classist is the more appropriate term. So if you've ever seen like pictures of old-time China or Japan, the royalty has these really elaborate silk dresses, both the men and the women, gowns, whatever, but they oftentimes have this very white pancake makeup on, and that can be anything from the actors, the kabuki actors, the geisha women all have this. It's frequently done with pearl powder if they're of higher stature, higher socioeconomic. And so this is another example of folks with slightly darker skin, and so Asian, turning their faces white, not because they want to be Caucasian, because they frequently didn't have any contact with it. It's because the paler your skin, the less you had to toil in the fields. And so people who work outdoors tend to be lower socioeconomic or societal lower rung if there's some sort of caste system. So the making themselves look lighter in color means they have a life of luxury where they can stay inside, avoiding sunlight and the sweat and so forth. Interesting, in our modern culture, we have the people who have more white skin, Caucasian, we're all trying to tan, and somehow that's healthier for us. So it's always interesting how skin tone changes based on your culture. It's another example of the grass is always greener. Even with the black community, at least in the U.S., actually in the Caribbean as well. I always say it's like a 10-year cycle. They'll go through, sometimes a darker skin is better, the whole black is beautiful kind of movement that was there in the 60s and 70s. And other times there's like all of these skin lightening compounds that are horrible and toxic and so forth. That is an attempt to lighten your skin, going along with those concepts. If you're outdoors in the sun, dark people with dark skin will get darker skin. So black people tan and get darker skin if they're outside going to the beach and so forth. And so literally this rotation back and forth between all of it. We even had that in the white community as well, the whole heroin chic of I think that was like this early 70s, where that very thin, pasty, pale white was thought to be healthy, or heroin addiction, one of the two. So the pearl powder there's a couple of ways to think about it from a Chinese energetic standpoint. Didn't know I was going to do that much Chinese today. Oh well, cool. So things that come from the ocean, in particular, pearls, are said to be salty in their nature. And anything salty in nature is used for the health of the energetic kidney. And so it can help with hearing, anti-aging, so slowing that aging process down. And in this case, not only is it salty because and if you taste it, it's not salty, it's just because it comes from the ocean. But it's also cooling in its nature. A lot of our seafoods and sea products are definitely considered cooling. And so this would be good for where yang deficiency was deficient and cold. Yin deficiency is deficient and dry, where you don't have enough of the cool, moist qualities of the body. And so for somebody who is getting night sweats in particular, who was kind of just dry skin, red skin, or darker skin, especially right here on the cheekbone, what's called a malar flush. And so your malar bone would be either darker for darker skin, or red for lighter skin. The pearl powder can be taken internally. I would say, again, this is a terrible thing to say, not that cost should be our guide, but if you're getting it so cheap that you're like, oh, I'm just going to buy pounds of this stuff, it's probably adulterated with rocks, sometimes with plastic, and it's horrifying. And the wild caught pearls are considered better. This is one of those cases where money dictates. So you have kind of three types of pearls. You have the perfectly round wild caught pearls coming from oysters. So that would be the really expensive pearls there. You have imperfections in the pearl where there's weird bumps and so forth. Those could be ground up into pearl powder. And then you have manufactured pearls where it sounds really creepy because it is, but they would electroshock an oyster, insert a plastic or hard disc in there that was perfectly round, and all a pearl is there's an irritant inside the I think it's the mantle of the oyster, and it secretes the shiny inside of the shell in order to form a smooth protective thing so it doesn't irritate all of its stuff inside the shell. So the ones that have that are manufactured pearls, they still have mother of pearl, that's the shiny stuff on the outside, but on the inside is a not natural product. And so if it was to be ground up as pearl powder, it's grinding up whatever that stuff is, that hard plastic can be ground up into there. So it's not out of the ordinary to find adulteration in pearl powder from just crappy people throwing junk in there, but also if they're using cultured, imperfect pearls, that's the right name for it, not manufactured, cultured pearls. There's oftentimes an unintentional adulteration in there. And I'll say this isn't a Chinese herb, but way back when, one of my other 400 careers before I ran away to be a full-time herbalist, I was a conch fisherman. So down in the Bahamas, I was a half owner as a teenager in a conch and lobster boat with No Boodle, who was also my Caribbean medicine, Bahamian medicine teacher. One of the things we used to do out on the boat. And there was a fairly rare thing called a conch pearl. And in case some of you don't know what a conch is, it's spelled that way. A lot of people pronounce it conch. I don't know. We call it conch, like conch you in the head. Although spelt the same. We say a lot of things funny down in the Bahamas. So in the same way, whether oyster, clam, or conch, so univalve is a conch because it's like a big snail, but with pretty, very pink mother of pearl on it. It's actually beautiful. Anything that lives in the ocean that is univalve or bivalve, so one shell versus two shells, gets an irritant of sand or something in there, it will form some form of pearl. So conch pearls oftentimes were imperfect, but they were this pink pearl. Sometimes you'd get some other kind of milky pink in there to almost bright red. And every time we would come into harbor after a couple of weeks at sea, they would come, and if we found any conch pearls, they would pay us literally, depending on the quality, anywhere from $20 to a couple of $100 if it was a more perfect pearl. So big market for that. I don't believe anybody manufactures those, but I would say those imperfect ones could still be used in the same way pearl powder is. So all it is ground up mother of pearl. You'll also find some cheaper stuff is just breaking it off of the shell. The other uses for pearl powder, it's actually used for high blood pressure. Honestly, the question was actually about vision. I don't know it for vision. It may very well be, especially for red, dry eyes, but it probably wouldn't be my first choice. There's some other shells that we like for vision better. And they're almost always put into a formula, not used by itself. And because pearl powder, it's a rock ultimately, right? It's calcium carbonate plus. You need to have good stomach acid in order to ingest it, because it will start to neutralize your stomach acid if you do too much of it. So there's definitely some cautions with that. And lower stomach acid can interfere with some medications by slowing their absorption time. Hey, Elena, sorry. If anybody has any questions, I've got a couple more to do, but feel free to post any questions. I got that one. I got that one. I got that one. Okay. Anybody has any more questions? Feel free to post them on there. What do I want to do next? So many choices. let's God, what was it I mentioned? Oh, and this comes up a lot. Oh, that's so funny. I have definitely not heard of it for reversing blindness. Oh, thank you. I That was on my list. Then I forgot to write it down. So yes, for blindness, I don't know. I would not go there, but just watch the stomach acid is probably the most important part, and make sure you're getting good quality. I honestly almost never use it because I don't think it's worth the money. Um, so, yay! Yes, we just had our. I won't say our first case, but last year we had a fairly large, I would call it large, malaria outbreak in Sarasota County. I don't know what our final count was, and just this, I think it was this past week, a endogenous, so a case that came from Hillsborough County, not somebody flying in from Central America or something. Our first case of dengue fever. Yay! And I've been screaming, I've been screaming this from the rooftop for about 15 years. As we see global warming and the warmer and warmer temperatures, I literally don't remember the last time we had a frost here. Um, Gotta remember where I'm writing this. Comfrey. Ooh, that was weird. I saw the question about Comfrey, but then it went away. That's so weird. Oh well. Hopefully it pops back up again in a second. Um, so, as we see the expansion of, I haven't heard it called miracle plant, but it's a good name for it. I'll get to that one in a second. As we see the expansion of heat and the loss of frost to knock back the mosquito population, um, we're seeing a expansion of the territory of a very specific type of mosquito that carries things like malaria and dengue fever. So all of these tropical diseases we have not seen literally in 100 years here in Florida, we're starting to see in the southern United States. We're starting to see it in Florida. We're starting to see it in Texas. I assume in Southern California, but I won't swear to that. Maybe the Pacific moderates the temperature there a little bit. And so all of us need to become expert uh, on mosquito-borne diseases. And I will say that although if I get malaria or dengue fever, I'm going to go to the hospital. There's certain herbs that yep, I'm going to get to that. There's certain herbs I'm going to take on my way to the hospital because both malaria and dengue fever can kill you. So it's nothing to be played with. They're fairly easy to treat. Um, the dengue fever is also called bone break fever. And it's not that your bones are going to break, but the fever gets really high in dengue fever, and your muscles start to contract. You can all get convulsions, comas, and things like that. But it's painful, and so it literally feels like your bones are snapping. It's so painful, and so the the herb that is most commonly used for that is an herb called boneset. And it's not that boneset isn't helpful for setting bones, not like comfrey, and we'll come up to comfrey here in a minute. But boneset will relieve the fever as if the pain associated with that high fever, uh, as if somebody were setting the bones. And this is a very common herb. It's inexpensive. You can use it dried or fresh. It actually grows in Florida. I haven't found it in years, but I know it's out here. Um, uh, you can use a tincture. You can do a tea. It tastes like crap. Um, and the other thing is, we'll see the platelet levels drop to the point where it can be critical and bad things happen, like death. Is the platelet levels dropping, and those platelets need to be preserved. So one way to do that is, as somebody just said, is papaya leaf specifically. And so that comes from the Philippines. You see that some in Central and South America. I learned it from Filipino people, but that's their go-to for not reducing the fever, not curing it or anything else, but to help preserve those platelets. So don't have access, Boneset and papaya leaf, but you should go to the hospital. There are, with malaria, there is any number of different things that we can use. Man, the chat's being weird. It's like everybody's popping in and out. I don't even understand. With malaria, I like Qing Hao. The Chinese herb Qing Hao, but some of you know it as, Sweet Annie. And this is an artemisia. This, I would say any artemisia will do in a pinch, but this one is so specific for malaria. It is one that I've used for people traveling overseas into malaria-ridden countries, and they have chosen not to do the malaria medications so far, and it's over 20, under 50. I don't know how many people I've given it to. No one's got malaria yet. And the best example, there was some people going over to do relief work, and I think 2 or 3 of them did the Sweet Annie. 2 or 3 did the standard medication, and 2 or 3 of them decided that, like, they're not going to get malaria. And they were in a slum doing relief work in East Africa, and all of the people who did nothing got malaria. One of the people who took the prescription medication got malaria. None of the people who took Qing Hao, the Sweet Annie, none of them got it. I have no idea. Susan, I have no idea whether it has I don't believe it does. I was trying to think. I was like, oh, what is that? So there are other herbs that have the quinine alkaloids in them, but I don't believe Sweet Annie does. I think it works on a different mechanism. My understanding is the Sweet Annie stops the malaria critter. It's a spirochete. It stops it from going in. It has 4 stages of development. It stops it from progressing into the second stage if it's in your system. And so it's interfering with the development of the malaria. And I have heard it talked about for other mosquito-borne diseases like chikungunya, dengue, and so forth. I've not used it for those. And it's the Sweet Annie is the Sweet Annie is primary. The research supports that there was a Nobel Peace Prize, and there is a product called Artemisian. I'm probably spelling this wrong. Artemisian, that is an extracted alkaloid from the Sweet Annie that is being used. Like, the World Health Organization bought up a bazillion doses of it and distributing it into those countries like Africa in particular, where most of the malaria is. Distributing it there because it kills millions of people around the world. And we saw it distributed in Asia as well. And we're now seeing the resistance to the artemisian because some of the shadier people in the world were watering it down, and because it was a subclinical dosage of an isolated chemical, it was able to build up resistance. So we're now starting to see the first malaria that is resistant to this alkaloid. I'm a fan of using whole herbs, and I don't believe you can get resistance to a whole herb. There's too many chemicals. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that there's no way that they can create that resistance to that. Into sweet. Oh, no way. That's really cool that their University of Kentucky is turning an old tobacco farm into a Sweet Annie farm on research on cancer and COVID. I wasn't familiar with its use for COVID. But I knew a lot of functional medicine docs give that to everybody with cancer. So it's really an interesting one. There's also a paradise tree. There we go. It's a Florida native called paradise tree. Paradise. And I have not worked with this for malaria or dengue, but there's some good research on it. I have one tree. It's small still. It's like maybe 5 feet tall. That grows more prolifically. Lisa, down by you, I found this growing in the park where I had the acupuncture conference 2 years ago in Fort Lauderdale, near the beach there. So it is a heat tolerant. It's native to the Caribbean. It is saltwater tolerant and is used specifically for malaria and I believe dengue, if I'm not mistaken. It is up there on some of the worst tasting herbs I've ever tasted. And my guess is if you used it, it would make you poop yourself. So it's a very dense, oily wood, beautiful tree. But I hate to say it because I'm expecting to see more and more tropical diseases here in Florida, and particularly mosquito-borne diseases. I'm kind of doing my homework on those and looking for our native plants that are effective for that. The paradise tree is, I always want to call it a prince tree or princess tree, and I'm like, I don't know why I have a brain cramp on that one. But this is one I'm going to start working with and experimenting with for, in Bob's running joke, for killy stuff. So for things that are resistant to some of our more commonly used things, I'm finding that one helpful. So, and of course, everybody from the rooftop, the city, county, state, have always said, like, get rid of your standing water, don't go out sunrise and sunset. Those are the times when the particular species of mosquito that carries dengue and malaria, that's when they're most active. Not to say you can't get it in the middle of the day, but if you're like, I think I'm going to go for a walk in the swamp right at sunset, the 30 minutes either side of it, that's where you're most likely to pick that stuff up. And I didn't say that. The sweet Annie is not meant to be used as prevention. And I hate to say it, I kind of made the protocol up myself. I did, I did a lot of research. I read a lot of articles and PubMed and all that, and I studied what the life cycle of the malaria critter is. And what I looked at was when I went, and it was a Nobel Peace Prize, I read the research on artemisian, and it was stopping that second phase. And so I was like, okay, where's that happen? And it can happen up to 10 days after you're infected by a mosquito carrying malaria. So what I decided was, even though it's a cold, dry herb, so somebody who's really cold all the time and really maybe anemic or blood deficient, they're going to have a harder time doing the sweet Annie. But for everybody else, doing a lower dosage as prevention, it's not that you're still going to get bit by a mosquito. It may be carrying malaria. What it does is, for that the very second that it transitions to that second phase of its development, it will not progress. It'll die. And so rather than waiting for those symptoms of malaria to materialize, which is the standard of care using artemisian, you wait till you have malaria, and then as soon as you start to show this alternating chills and fever, which is kind of indicative of that, body aches and so forth, then they administer the medication. And so although you probably couldn't take sweet Annie every day for the rest of your life, for the folks I'm working with, they tend to travel to countries where malaria is prevalent for anywhere from a week to maybe 2 or 3 months. And what I've found is it's been fine to take it for that long. The one thing I always caution is it's challenging for the liver. So if somebody has fatty liver disease, elevated liver enzymes, anything like that, I don't recommend it then. And the challenge is, what do I recommend? And I don't have a good answer for that. It's more of a cover my ass kind of thing, because I don't know what it's going to do longer term in there. The problem with the prescription medications is it can, in a small number of people, cause a psychotic break about a week after you start taking it. So hallucinations, violent behavior, all kinds of stuff. So you're in some third world country when you lose your mind and you had no idea. They take away your medications while you're in jail, and you come back to reality and you go, oh crap, what have I done? And I always encourage anybody who is choosing to do the medication, start it about 2 weeks before you leave the US and make sure you're monitored by somebody watching for any kind of mental health stuff or other side effects, because you don't want to get down there, have to stop taking it, and then you have nothing. So there are a couple of different medications with varying degrees of success, but I don't think, and somebody correct me if I'm not, I don't think the medications for malaria work better than 70% success rate. So it's very common to get malaria even when you're on medications. So the best thing obviously is avoiding them in general. So the papaya doesn't prevent it. So it's, if you get dengue fever, make tea out of the papaya leaf. And so you can use fresh or dried. So you can, papaya leaf is probably good for about 6 months or a year dried. So easy to grow papayas here in Florida. And just make sure you either use a fresh leaf. I would say probably a rounded tablespoon, think about 10-15 grams of dried leaf in a cup, 8 ounces of hot water, steep it for about 20-30 minutes, and I would drink that as fast as I could continually until you recovered from it. For a toddler, yeah, I'd say anything over 6 months would be fine with the papaya leaf. It's generally a very safe herb. It's not something though that you do every day. It's something, if you're getting dengue fever, that's when you'd want to start utilizing it. It's not dangerous. It's not something like stinging nettles that you would take every day. So it's more of a situational kind of thing. Oh yeah, Susan. Sorry, I'm making sure I didn't miss anything here. I saw a bunch of people posted stuff. Yeah, it's funny. Tabitha, you mentioned, and like, I got to quiz you one of these days whenever I see you next of what you think of Adam there on the East Coast. Tabitha mentioned a few comments ago that chiropractors she used to work with were using Sweet Annie for COVID. And it is an excellent, and they were using the Artemisian, the standard it's not standard process, one of those companies that makes it. There's a couple of companies out there making Artemisian now. But what they were, that herb is very dry, and a lot of COVID is dry. It's a dry, weak cough, and so if you're going to use the Artemisia for that, I would make sure you pair it with something that is more moistening, and it could be anything from marshmallow, which is a good lung cough herb. But also, since I like my Chinese herbs and we're going crazy on it, there's fish mint, Houtonia, that's called Yu Xing Sao, and you can grow that here. It grows great, actually. It's a cold moistening antimicrobial that is probably a good pairing with the Sweet Annie. My grandmother, because down by the river in Hillsborough on Father's Day, he had a fever and a rash. Yeah, good choice. Like, so if any didn't see it, they'd had their, and how old was your son? I may have missed it. Was out playing on Father's Day and had a fever and a rash on his belly that was, they didn't have a good explanation, so they took him to the hospital, and that was a good choice. Gave them the information, they were shocked. So yeah, and it's tough, even though we're seeing it in the news, there's a lot of doctors either don't know anything about tropical diseases, they don't know what tests to order, or don't recognize the signs and symptoms. And I hope he didn't have dengue. 13 months, okay. Okay, grandson, sorry. It's hard when I'm reading this fast sometimes. So 13 months, you should be fine. Just adjust the dosage for weight. Did he actually end up getting diagnosed with the dengue? Or is it just like, he's got a weird rash? We don't know. You know, and I'll say generically, um, obviously for a little one, a little over a year old, um, they shift really fast, right? So they can be super healthy on top of the world, and literally an hour later, lethargic, high fever, dehydration, and literally that can get scary. Um, Good he didn't have dengue. Um, and so, really important when kids are, young like that to monitor them in outside, whether, it can be tick bites, it could be a dermatitis, like if he was crawling around in the dirt and brushed up against something that he had a sensitivity to, it could cause a rash. Chiggers are out there. There's so many little things that for a little one like that where they can't always complain about what they're experiencing, it's important to be monitoring, especially outdoors in the woods, to be a little extra vigilant, do a tick check and things like that, just to make sure. And yeah, and sometimes it's boring stuff like, does teething cause rashes? Not usually. Can it? Totally. And so one of the things you could do if he is teething, I'm assuming that's true. One of my favorites is making a strong infusion out of yarrow, Achilles multiflora. Yarrow is, and you can use chamomile as well, but I like the yarrow in particular. Make a really strong tea out of it, and then take a washcloth, and you could make a couple of washcloths, and then put it in the freezer until it gets like almost frozen or just frozen, and then have them chew on it. And you can do tea bags, but that can get messy and break open and stuff. I really like just the infusion soaked cloth for them to chew on. The yarrow stops bleeding, reduces inflammation, and that low grade fever that sometimes comes with teething will actually help with that. And so it is a nice simple one. You can grow yarrow here, but you can use the dried. It works fine. It's not native to Florida, maybe Panhandle or something. It definitely grows up north. I usually have a couple of small yarrow plants here that they usually do pretty well. You can keep them going for a little while, and they'll even bloom. And in general, if you buy it, don't buy it from Home Depot. Generally, not a great place to source your plants. The flower should be white on that. If you keep it nourished and use some nice fish emulsions and things like that, it'll get a nice white umbral bloom on it. And if you go up north, it's a weed up there. It's growing out of the cracks of sidewalks, so that's an easy one. Man, where'd the time go? Oh, I got to do my station identification. If you're just showing up, I'm Bob Linde. I'm an acupuncturist and herbalist here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we have a multi-practitioner practice here with herbalists and acupuncturists at Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies, acuherbals.com. And I also teach two different two-year herbal programs, one focused on Western herbal medicine with a focus on our bioregional or our local plants. That's all the way from beginner to clinician, as well as a Chinese herbal program that's also a good, I always feel bad saying this, prep school for acupuncture school that'll really help you start what can be a very challenging first year or so in acupuncture school, really prepares you nicely for that. And we've got a variety of really cool standalone classes if you're just wanting some new knowledge or put your toes in gently. First aid class is this weekend. It's a weekend intensive. That's everything from home first aid to wilderness to protest and at sea first aid kind of stuff. Thursday, July 11th, understanding auricular therapy. Auricular therapy is the ear seeds or needling that can happen on the ears. That is a microsystem in the body I'm a huge fan. It's phenomenal for stress, pain, and I didn't say this when I started at 6. For addiction, it was there's a specific protocol for heroin addiction that is also helpful for a variety of other addictions. July 12th, a Friday, is everything you ever want to know about cordyceps, and you'll make some cool medicine and stuff out of that. July 18th is the part of the Ayurvedic series on Thursday, and the focus on the digestive system. You'll be introduced to the term Agni, I'm sure, when Gray's teaching that. July 22nd is Saturday evening. I think it's at 5:30. Is our AHG, American Herbalist Guild chapter meeting. This is open for everybody. So that you do not have to be a member of the American Herbalist Guild, although you should be if you're an herbalist. But you can attend the chapter meetings, any of the events. Some of them we charge a different rate, whether you're a member or not. I don't believe there's any charge for this. It's Shed Talks, which is a play on TED Talks, if you're familiar with those. So we'll have herbalists that we're going to give the nudge to the HG members. We don't have our titles yet, but we've got, hopefully we'll be taking and coming up with our schedule. They will be 18-minute lectures in the format of TED Talks that'll be going on. That was a huge hit last year when we created that. The next open forum will be July 26th, same format as we always do. If you're an Chinese herb student, acupuncture student, or practitioner, the Florida State Oriental Medicine Association is coming up in Orlando, August 16th through the 18th. I would say if you're from another state and you're in the realm, it's worth traveling to. Check out the class schedule. You can pay for one day or for the whole weekend. I'll be teaching 2 classes. Yay, me. And then August 2nd is herb-drug interactions. This is appropriate for any level practitioner, whether you're just self-medicating with supplements and herbs. It's very user-friendly. I'm not going to sit there and babble about P450, CY, blah, blah, blah. That's all interesting for researchers. And this is going to be on Zoom, so you do need to register so that we can send you the Zoom link. And that'll also be in person here at the school that night. So join us in person, join us online. Either one is appropriate. And my guess is I'll upload the recording to YouTube afterwards as well. If you're not familiar with the American Herbalist Guild, please check out the American Herbalist Guild. You can Google it, but their annual conference will be in Black Mountain, North Carolina this year, October 4th through the 7th. It's just do it. It's good. If you've never been to a conference, it's super fun. If you can't afford it, they do have work study available and scholarship. It's a great way to just learn more at every level that's there. And I'm teaching one class there. Yay. And oh yeah, I gotta always remember there's, for all you yoga instructors or herbalists, massage therapists, this would be super appropriate. There's a variety of CEUs for initials that I don't recognize. There's still an early bird special for HG, for Suma, and for the Thai herbs and herbal compresses class coming up on Saturday, Sunday, October 5, 6. We're bringing in, Bob Haddad. And so this is really good, more advanced for all of my yogis and stuff out there, and massage therapists who want to use herbs into the massage therapy practice. This would be super appropriate to do like the Thai stretching body work. This is an adjunctive part classically used for that, and he trained for ridiculous amounts of time in Thailand and elsewhere. So hopefully you can join us for some of that cool stuff. All right, I said that. Comfrey, let me talk about Comfrey. Yay. Sorry, I got to keep up with all of this stuff. Make sure I didn't miss anything while I was reading pieces of paper. Also that he didn't have dengue. All right, I think I'm caught up. Comfrey is a phenomenal herb. And I say that it comes with cautions. And it is, in a way, a controversial herb because there's huge debate about it. I will say Comfrey grows really well here in Florida, at least here in St. Pete. I have plants that I've kept going for, 4 or 5 years, I think is probably my oldest one. We have one here at the school that's like that big around. It's probably 4 feet in diameter. It's very easy to grow, very easy to propagate, to make new ones. There are a couple of different species of them out there. One that's talked about a lot is the Bach 14. that has presumably a better safety parameter. The big concern with Comfrey is the PAs in it, the pyrolytic alkaloids that are in there that accumulate in the body. So the more you do it, the more you have, and can cause venal occlusive disease, which is affecting the liver. And that's where the big debate comes from, because it's also a long history of Southern medicine as a digestive, carminative. Topically, it's phenomenal. There's zero concerns with it. Well, actually, I'm going to come back and say something contradicting that. From a PA standpoint, there are zero concerns of its topical use. Absolutely none. The older leaves, oddly, have less PAs than the younger leaves, and the roots, I believe, have more than the leaves. And the Bach 14, which was designed to have lower, has lower ones as well. The one I would say most people will not argue with this. If you're pregnant, please do not use Comfrey internally ever. There is a very real risk of causing harm to the fetus. And it's irreversible. And I would say I would probably not use it for anybody under the age of 8, internally as a tea. Externally, whatever, I don't care. It's moistening, it's cooling. I love the fresh plant. One of my favorite things to do, I just did it last week, is to go out, cut a leaf off, and come in, mash it up, and make a poultice, i.e. make some slimy herbs and put them on an area of pain. Because I don't want to kill my plant, I almost never harvest the root. So I'll buy dried powder for the root. I think it has a little bit better use as a trauma herb, a first aid kind of herb. I almost never, and notice I put the caveat almost never, I do maybe once a year use it internally on a client with informed consent. I tell people that I like to see blood work to make sure that their liver enzymes and their liver function is fine. I tell them that there is a concern over cumulative toxicity, i.e. the more they take it, the more it's an issue. And I generally will give it to them up to 2 weeks daily. And I usually give it to people who have had a horrible car accident and all their bones are broken. I had somewhere there's a video, there was a guy who was he was a professional race car driver, but was doing a charity go-kart racing thing. There's a longer version of this as well. And go-kart exploded and he was lit on fire. There's literally video of him. Luckily he didn't run very far, stop, drop, and roll and all that. And he had second and third degree burns over shoulder, arms, back, and had the gas cap when the go-kart exploded hit his elbow, shattered his elbow, and had some pins just to hold it all together. And he chose to refuse skin grafts and refused pain meds. Checked himself out of the hospital after 2 days and came to see us. And at the time we were downtown, had a functional medicine doc in the clinic as well. And we used a specific acupuncture technique that's for burns, using ion pumping cords, and it's weird. We had a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and we put him in there twice a day for 2 hours. He'd bring a sandwich and a book and a pee bucket, and so he would spend a lot of time in there, and its ability to help heal damaged tissues. And with his consent, I got him fresh comfrey leaves from my yard, and I gave him 1 leaf a day for 10 days. And there's a video on YouTube somewhere, and it is shocking how his second and third degree burns healed dramatically fast. And third degree burns, you're never supposed to have feeling or blood flow or anything after that. His healed in, I think it was either 6 or 8 weeks, completely healed, and had normal use function, and would actually bleed. That was not dead tissue. His elbow healed so fast, it was so sad. We know he had strength, he had full range of motion in 2 weeks after this major surgery. And that's impossible according to the orthopedics who did the work. And so when we said, like, no, seriously, we're afraid that this is healed faster than they know, they wouldn't evaluate it. So we sent and they refused to take a picture because those pins had to come out. So 4 weeks was the fastest they thought that the bone could heal. And when they did it, they saw that the bone had actually grown over the pins. And so he had to wait until he raised the $10,000 because the insurance wouldn't pay for it, and to have those chipped out so that those pins could be removed because they were causing problems. So it is scary how fast and effective it is. But again, I had blood work on him, I informed consent, and we had blood work after to ensure it was safe. And he wasn't pregnant, so that was safe. The other caution, I will say, like, once a year is the most I use it. I use it topically probably every 2 weeks on something for somebody. Now I'm going to say, like, for closed wound injury, acute injury, so sprained ankle, contusions, somebody was doing mixed martial arts, they fell off their bike, whatever. If there is a deeper wound, a deep puncture wound, please don't use Comfrey for that. The problem is it contains an alkaloid called allotonin that was a prescription drug for a while. Allotonin is used to stimulate skin growth. So if you have, like, this deep puncture wound and you grow the skin across the surface super fast, and like within a day or two it can grow over a deeper wound, it will trap the anaerobic bacteria in here, and you end up with really scary infection that can get festering and things we don't want. So I use plantain for those weeds, plantago, not the banana. Don't stick a banana in a wound. I don't know what that would do. So the plantago, plantain. After it's so hard. I don't know why to say shoulder surgery. It's like seashells, seashells. So yes, topically, and there's a question like, could we use it if there's a fresh incision with stitches in it? I would probably not, because that's still healing. Without a doubt, you could 100% do it after the stitches are out and that's healed. But what I will do sometimes, like, depending on what the surgery was, and there may be a cast, there may be a bandage on there or something, I'll put it nearby, and that alone is enough to just remove the inflammation decently. It's also called the knit bone, is one of its other names. And I would say, so knit bone, it will help to realign bones. I've used it for crush fractures, where like somebody fell and crushed their arm. With the pain, and you know, I assume you're either avoiding or they're useless, the pain meds, go see an acupuncturist. The auricular therapies or ear seeds or ear needles can be really effective for pain. They won't go anywhere near the shoulder for it because it's already pissed off enough. And there's a number of really effective analgesic herbs that can be taken internally where we don't have those concerns with PAs. But always got to be careful what meds and overall constitution on that. So my short and long of all of that is, Comfrey's phenomenal, easy to grow. It prefers more dappled light or shade. You can grow it in a pot, but it needs to be a big pot because it has a tap root that goes down. Not a huge one, but like I would do a large, there we go, like what is that, 1.5 feet? I'd make it a big pot with rich, well-drained soil. It does not want standing water. No, you could use it for a tear as well. Um, yeah, it can be soft tissue just as well as it can be bones. Like everybody thinks bones, but it's like soft tissue. It's great. So I will say, growing it. I need a dry erase board behind me so I can draw pictures. Um, you can, so seeds are harder, but you can do it. You can usually buy a root and propagate it from the root. But once you have it, there's a couple of really interesting things about growing comfrey. It likes to be disturbed. And so if you're like, my plant's doing really good, but I want to get a couple, I want to give them to my friends, or I want to like have them just new plants around, take your pitchfork, put it next to your, don't stick it in it, but go right next to your comfrey plant and then just rough it up really hard. And it will start to expand. It will put out little pups. You can dig it up, break off all of those little suckers off of it, and each one of those will grow. If you really want to be fancy, so you have a long taproot, as long as you have a piece of where the head of that taproot is, you can divide that root into, I usually don't go more than 4 or 5, but if it's a really, like sometimes I'll get a root that's like a few inches around, I can get 6 or 8 and just do longitudinal slices of that root and propagate those. Oh, and I didn't mention, and may have been what you were referring to, it's very mineral rich. And so for things like any kind of tooth issues, creating a mouth rinse for your teeth can be really helpful, both to keep from the loss, or if you have like bone loss. I hear about that all the time. It's horrid. There's bone loss and the teeth are falling out or getting infected from an old infection. It can be helpful, but also is compost. So it is without a doubt mineral rich, and creating a compost tea, i.e. take a bunch of leaves, the dead brown ones, whatever, and just throw them into a bucket of water. It's good to add. You can buy in pretty much any plant nursery mosquito donuts, because you don't want mosquitoes inside your compost tea, and let it kind of like ferment, rot, break down, whatever you want to call it. You can put other stuff in there too. And that will make a wonderful thing, both to help with fertilizing your plants, just as a something to pour on for just general nutrients. But also you can use comfrey powder or the compost tea if you're doing cuttings. If you're like, I'm being a purist, I don't want to use the hormone root starter. I like the combination. I'll sometimes go a whole hog, so you can do your own version of it. I like calendula, comfrey, and rosemary all together. And again, you can either grind it into a powder and dip it into that, or make just a really thick, like muddy tea / paste, and dip your cuttings into that before you start them in the ground. I think it helps. It's a different way to create root stimulator if you're trying to avoid some of those chemical things. So what else did I have on there? Oh, do I have time? Yeah, what the heck? I got time for fibro, because that's easy to fix, right? So fibromyalgia is not a well understood disharmony. I don't even like the word disease, because the way Western medicine looks at it, they're not sure whether it's autoimmune. They're not sure whether it's nerve, and they're constantly coming up with new ideas that are all interesting. I will say that, sorry, it's like, I'm tired, I've been working all day, leaning forward. I will, yeah, that was super risky putting that on MRSA. I would not recommend that. Like, obviously, antibiotics, but blah, blah, blah. But plantain and a number of other herbs would have been way safer. If that had grown over the top, that could have been life-threatening. So you got lucky on that one. Not to say Comfrey's not good for MRSA, but that would probably be potentially scary. The So fibromyalgia is not understood from Western medicine. It's gotten some very insulting names to it over the years. It's frequently lumped in with chronic fatigue syndrome. The standard care, I don't think it's changed a whole lot, is an antidepressant and an anti-inflammatory, and sometimes long-term prednisone, which is generally not helpful, and um, potentially crappy side effects from that approach. Um, the criteria for that is the main. There's a couple of criteria, but the main one is that you have a certain number of tender points that are present and don't have another cause. So you go to the doctor and see if you have fibromyalgia, and he'll go, "Does this hurt? Does this hurt? Does this hurt?" And he presses on a bunch of points. And if you're having a particularly good day and you don't go, "Ow," then you don't have it according to them. So what I would say, if you know what causes you to have a flare-up of fibromyalgia, make sure you do all the wrong things prior to trying to get a diagnosis, so your whole body is jacked prior to going, because it can be helpful to at least have the diagnosis to trigger some good blood work and things like that. I do think it's important to rule out other causes for fibromyalgia, to make sure your vitamin D levels are adequate. I consider adequate above 50, but under 100. That your B12 and B6 levels are adequate. For B12, much more common. I look for at least, and I do say at least above 500. The scale usually is like, varies on lab to lab, but it's like 250 to about 900. Some of them go higher, some of them are around there. If you're below 500, it is debilitating. And so ensuring that you are processing your B12, that you're getting sufficient amounts. You also don't want it over 2,000. I don't mind if it's a little high, but you don't want like silly high. The ideal test is, and this is harder to get the doctors to do, is an MMA test. And I abbreviated it because the abbreviation's common, and I also don't know how to spell methylmalonic acid. So methyl is easier, malonic acid is harder, but if you look for that MMA test, you can usually find it. So B12, B6, a full iron panel, which includes ferritin, if I can spell it. Oh my God. Ferritin. You can tell I'm tired when I have ferritin, iron, and iron saturation. That can also cause fibromyalgia-like symptoms. Also, iron deficiency can cause restless leg, which we sometimes see associated with it. I also, if you have a doctor who's willing to work with you, just for giggles, to do an ANA to rule out other autoimmune disorders. And then, without a doubt, we can do this through Western herbal medicine. I really prefer Chinese medicine in this case, and yay, acupuncture, great if you can afford it. But because fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue can be debilitating where you're on disability, it's hard to be able to afford things like, going to full-time acupuncture practice. And depending on your state, the insurance rarely pays for it. If you have disability for pain through the VA will pay for it if you're a veteran. But this is textbook pain that comes and goes, is textbook chi stagnation. So frequently what we would call liver chi stagnation. And there's a couple of different ways different combinations and formulas. From a Western herbal standpoint, we're looking for a tense condition, and those are frequently a category of herbs that we call nervines. And it's important. That's why I always say it's like, and y'all have heard me rant this enough, you can Google things all day long, you're never going to get the right answer and the right combination. Going to see an herbalist who's using An energetic system of evaluation, i.e. they're looking at your tongue, taking your pulse, seeing whether you run hot or cold, wet or dry, tense or lax, and looking at diet to make sure there's not a food sensitivity, uh, and then putting together a formula based on you as an individual. And ideally, as you get better, that formula should change. Like if you take the same formula for 10 years, it's probably just masking symptoms rather than moving you towards a place of balance. And that should be the goal of all of our herbal stuff always. And so there isn't a, oh, holy basil, ashwagandha, those cure all your fibro. Like those may or may not be a part of your herbal protocol for all of that. Certainly, if there's chronic fatigue is going on, that's more likely to be a deficiency case. If it's kind of that wired and tired pain kind of thing, it may be more excess kind of conditions. So it's always important to have somebody else evaluating you. And I know all the things like turmeric. I've never seen turmeric fix fibromyalgia. I would say fibromyalgia is something I see good success with. 6 months to a year, most people are, if not completely symptom-free, close enough, especially if they're working on gentle exercise, stretching, things like that. Some very mild lifestyle changes can, plus the herbs, and bonus if you could do the acupuncture, but not required. The acupuncture just speeds it up. But whether it's just fibromyalgia or fibromyalgia with chronic fatigue syndrome, like find a Chinese herbalist, they'll get you there, like for real. I won't say it's easy, but it's not hard, and not hard to figure it out. And usually it's so often like, I could list 1,000 blood worky things because you want to make sure your thyroid's right. You want to, like, there's so much crap that, like, let's make sure there's some really basic plus blood work. And if you don't know it, you can order, if you have a doctor who's an ass, won't listen to reason. Or if you're like, crap, I don't have health insurance, but I sure think I got fibromyalgia. You also have the option of ordering your own blood work. And then ideally, like if you're in this area, order your own blood work. Then come see us at Student Clinic here. It's $15. But I would also say you can order your own blood work. You don't need a doctor. And so the walkinlabs.com, you just click all the tests that you want and just swipe your credit card. It prints out a lab order. You take it down to Quest or LabCorp, and you get the results. Depending, like if you're like, no, I know blood work, I know what I got to get, I just haven't done it, like go ahead and order it plus those couple things. Oh, excellent. If you're like, I don't know what all these words are you're saying, then it's better to wait until you come in. We can write down all the tests for you, and then you can go and order those on your own. Or, yeah, so perfect. You come in Student Clinic, I'm going to make them figure it out, I promise. I'm the one supervising the acupuncture interns. And then, I think you just asked about vervain. So, really funny. So, vervain, and boy, I should know, there are more than one type of vervain. So the herb that ideally is used, and it's more of a relaxing herb. It tastes horrid, by the way. It's a great herb, but it tastes horrid. Is blue vervain, and I kind of look for a personality type of, like, it's an anti-anxiety, stress, and it could be helpful for, and it could even be used as a thing. It might be helpful for fibromyalgia, but it's for really tense people, and they're kind of that type A personality. And the key symptom I look for is they're list makers. And so they're sitting there like they have lists for their lists. That person does really, yes, perfectionism. I like that. And literally, I'll ask people, or it's like, I'll sit there and think maybe this is the personality. I was like, do you just really love lists? And if they kind of look at me like I'm crazy, and they're like, yeah, why? And I was like, oh, vervain, blue vervain. So it can be a real winner in a case like that. I do recommend, and normally I'm like, make tea, and totally you can make tea out of it. I am challenged by the flavor of it, and I love bitter stuff. It's bitter. Um, that is one that might be better as either a tincture or a capsule, just to hide the intensity of the flavor. Again, still better to do in formulation, but it can be used as a single, and you should see results. Like, if it's going to help, it'll help in a week or so. Like, not dramatic, but you're like, oh, that's funny. I kind of lost my list and I don't care. Sleep will be a little better. Maybe anxiety and the tension in the body can be helpful. Also, and again, more symptoms rather than the fix. Hey, Daniel, you made it. Cool. Now we're just about ready to sign off. Kava Kava is not too shabby. It's good for more what feels like muscle spasms with anxiety. It also, just like the vervain, is drying. And I want to say one other thing about vervain before I forget. In Jamaica, vervain is a completely different herb. So vervain in Jamaica is something that we call porterweed, and I forget the Latin name of it, and is more used for fevers, colds, and flu, and yeah, that's mostly it. And so has very different. We see it help with anxiety if your anxiety is being caused by a lot of heat and fever. So make sure you know, and I'm embarrassed that I don't remember the Latin name for either one. Yep, total brain cramp on the vervain. So make sure you're not, like, if you're ordering from the islands or an island guy's telling you he's getting the one that's literally in your backyard already. The other vervain is from the Northeast or Europe. And if you want to learn more about vervain, I will say, like, yay, I learned about it, blah, blah, blah. Seven Song probably has one of the best, Seven Song has one of the best write-ups. He has a video, he has a write-up that I use his material in my classes frequently. I think he just had a brilliant way of explaining it. So you can go to sevensong.com. I think it's the number 7, but I won't swear to that. And Seven Song is a phenomenal medicine maker, great herbalist, great first eye. Thank you, Verbena hastata. Yes, that is the right species. Thank you. Oh my God, I hate it when my brain just blanks out on Latin sometimes. He is a wonderful resource. He doesn't talk about energetics, but he will talk about personalities of the plants and how to match them up, or their just acute action on there. But he is a trusted source for information, and he posts, like, I will never match the amount of information he gives away for free, and I give away a lot of shit for free. He just recently posted, like, his entire stuff for first aid that I'm including in our handout for first aid class this weekend. He frequently works the rainbow gatherings, and it was like his entire task list for that. Just like, nope, everybody should know this. He's got 20, 30 years of practice with it all. So do check his stuff out. And I'm gonna say my time is near, but for resources, I love Seven Song for giving stuff away. I encourage you all to check out his website. I love Jim McDonald. If there's many Jim McDonalds in the world, so if you put in Jim McDonald herbalist, I forget the name of his website. He has just a wealth of information. Yes, Susan, you are correct. That is the porterweed that we grow here, and is a Jamaican herb. And so Jim McDonald herbalist, his website will pull up, and he just a wealth of not just herbal stuff, but just folklore, woodsy. And if you ever have the opportunity to take a class with Jim McDonald, he is a freaking hoot and brilliant guy. And Michael Moore, not the movie producer, but the herbalist. He is literally the teacher of a lot of people. I think he taught Jim McDonald. I know he taught Seven Song, David Winston, a bunch of the herbalists from the 50s and 60s studied with Michael Moore. He's since passed away in the 90s. but his website is a great resource. And again, another starting point where it will send you off in 1,000 directions. His graduates still maintain his archive of information. All of those sites are free and are generally really just reliable, wonderful sources of stuff. And I'm going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to shut it down because my brain is broken, I think. So I'm always surprised that there's things I grew up with in the Bahamas and Florida and so forth that I just assume everybody knows, but then not everybody was as completely insane about wood stuff as myself. So this is more of a wilderness survival thing. Lighter's pine, there's another name for it, fat lighter or lighter's pine. And if you were to be walking through the woods and you just saw this piece of wood on the ground, you wouldn't think anything of it. And so this grows on, you'll find it on a downed pine tree. It's frequently at the knots, and the inside is almost like a dark brown resinous, I don't even know what else colors to call that. If you scratch it and smell it, it's super intense. This belongs in your wilderness first aid kit. It makes fire starting really easy. I was helping somebody start a fire yesterday, so I just macheted off a few pieces, and I prepped this ahead of time. So I did a quick shaving with a knife. Whoops, where is it? There we go. So I just made like a little sliver. And so you can literally just a single match light this, and it will, whoops, there we go. It will keep burning. You can also use this as a mosquito repellent to burn it. You can throw it underwater for a week, shake the water off, and it will still burn like this. So, you know, when you need fire the most, if you fall in a river, if you fall in a bog, and you're getting hypothermic, which you can do in Florida, I promise, and I'm not going to burn my fingers. This also makes a nice smudge that will keep smoldering for a little bit. This is something that belongs in your first aid. You can stick this in your backpack. If you don't want to carry a whole piece of wood, you make a couple of toothpick size things. Fat lighter or lighter's pine. Those are the two names that I know it by. There might be other cool names. And it's so funny. It's like somebody said, like, how do you find it? I was like, I'm sure somebody sells it. But whenever I'm out in the woods and I see a downed pine tree, I kick it. And so pine trees are really soft, right? So it breaks down, it rots really fast. So if you kick it and all of a sudden you're like, ow, and it sounds really solid, like literally if you got a knife or a machete or something, like and it's frequently, you know, here's the log and there'll be this joint that's kind of sticking out in the air and might be a foot or two long. You're like, that's super solid, and you tap on it, kick it, whatever, snap it off, and then shave it down with your knife, and you're going to find that really hard resinous. It smells beautiful. Can't you smell it, right? And accidentally have that fall into your backpack, because that would be illegal to harvest from any parks around. So only in your backyard can you do that. And it's funny, I know that is a Florida Bahama thing. I don't know whether that's a northern thing. So there's different types of pine trees and so forth. You know, I live in Pine Ellis County in, St. Petersburg. So, if any of you know about it up north, let me know. I know I just kind of, as a matter of stuff, I'm always kicking pine trees when I see them. If you see somebody beating up on poor defenseless trees, you'll know why I'm doing that. All right, it's late. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm going to pack it up here. I hope I see you in some of our classes in the not too distant future. Remember, we've got a student clinic 3 nights a week as a reduced rate, or if you want the folks with more experience and more convenient times, we've got practitioners here that are phenomenal 6 days a week. And come to classes. They're all online. All experience levels are encouraged. And I'll see y'all next month at the very latest. Good night. Yeah, I got to figure out how to turn it off. Oh, yeah. And don't forget to check for the recording on YouTube and read, or you can listen to all the past ones too.